Mark from the States, Mark from the States, it's Mark from the United States.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Mark from the States. How we doing today? Happy New Year to all of you. Thank you for coming to hang out. I got a big fake couch here. Please come join me. Today we're going to look at Redcoat history video. This has come requested. It is the most unluckiest, Britain's unluckiest regiment, the 44th. Should be, I don't know anything about it, of course. That's why I'm here to learn. That's what I love about our channel. I get to learn and see new things. You all maybe get to see new things and learn something or revisit something you already know. And for those who do know, can add context and help me understand things better. See how that works? That works wonderful. Two links, right? I lost my train of thought there. I apologize. Two links, one to this video, one to the channel, which is Redcoat History. Please, if you have one like or one subscription to give today, I encourage you, not on our channel, go over there and support the original content creator. And if you aren't already, subscribe. That is the best thing. That is payment for me, is for you to subscribe on the original content video channels that we are watching. It is awesome when someone says, yeah, I subscribed. Awesome. Makes me smile. Makes me happy. Big fake couch. Let's jump out. Okay. I love this channel. As you know, a lot of information gets thrown and there's so much of it, just military history in your country and the UK is in general. It is overwhelming, but it is still entertaining, and I do pick up bits and pieces, and hopefully a lot of it sticks somewhere in this mushy thing on top of my shoulders. So let's go.
The British Army has seen its fair share of heroes, victories and legendary moments. But what happens when one regiment always seems to be on the wrong side of fate? Enter the 44th Regiment of Foot, later known as the 44th East Essex Regiment. The regiment some historians believe was Britain's unluckiest. From North America to Afghanistan through 2 world wars, their story is one of
around a long time.
and sadly very, very bad luck. Formed in 1741, they were originally the 55th Regiment of Foot. But when several regiments were disbanded, the 55th were redesignated as the 44th. As the historical record of the regiment says, in the Royal Warrant of the 1st of July 1751 for ensuring uniformity in the clothing standards and colours of the army and regulating the number and rank of regiments, the facings of the 44th Regiment were directed to be yellow.
Yellow? Well, that's not a great color. Isn't that like the color of coward? Like you would say, are you yellow? At least in the Old West here in America, if you called someone yellow, and they would say it with their drawl, yellow, are you yeller? Would mean, are you scared? Are you a coward? Huh. I would admit, if that's true, I would say that's probably the reason why they're unlucky.
Rank of regiments, the facings of the 44th Regiment were directed to be yellow. It's worth noting that in some cultures, yellow is considered to be bad luck. The 44th Regiment of Foot were destined for a long and eventful career in the British Army, but while, like most regiments, they earned glory and fame, the 44th also earned a different kind of reputation, one for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But that didn't stop them fighting hard. Let's take a look at their story, battle by battle, disaster by disaster, and see just how far bad luck can follow you.
Dang.
We start in 1755 during the French and Indian War in North America. The 44th were part of General Braddock's army tasked with capturing the French fort Duquesne, I think that's how you say it. But as it says in the regimental history, many unforeseen and inconceivable difficulties attended this expedition against Fort Duquesne. Major General Braddock was obliged to march his army across the Allegheny Mountains over a rugged, pathless and unknown country through unfrequented woods and dangerous defiles. setting forth the continual labour and fatigue of the soldiers who had to cut out the roads across steep mountains and rocks of an excessive height and divided by rivers and torrents.
Even to this day, the Alleghenies, which I think is how we pronounce it, are just a trouble if trying to get through.
Now, it seems that General Braddock wasn't the smartest commander, and according to the regimental history, pushed on through hostile territory without sending out scouts to recce the route. Surprise, surprise, they were ambushed. The Native Americans and their French allies using cover expertly. Things quickly deteriorated for the British. Quote, the advanced guard was formed by the grenadiers of the 44th under Brevet Lieutenant Colonel the Honourable Thomas Gage. 22 men only of their number were left standing after the first discharge. The enemy could alone be discovered by the smoke of their musket, and great confusion was created by the tumultuous pressing on and crowding of the men behind, who earnestly requested instructions how to proceed. In this emergency, several of them fell by the irregular fire of their own comrades, as was ascertained afterwards, the bullets being of a larger size than those used by the foe. By this time, the 100 grenadiers were all killed, save 11, 3 of whom were mortally wounded. Most of the officers and men who stood firm to the last were sacrificed to the general's further mismanagement. Instead of directing a retreat, General Braddock remained upon the spot, his obstinacy increasing with the danger, until nearly all of his men were killed or wounded. Colonel Sir Peter Halkett of the 44th was also amongst those killed. It's said that many of the wounded were abandoned and then tortured by the Native Americans.
Yeesh.
Eventually, Braddock himself was killed, and a certain unknown colonel called George Washington ably led the retreat. Wonder how his career developed. Their next big battle was even more disastrous. Let's fast forward to 1758. The British were determined to capture Fort Ticonderoga in northern New York from the French. All right, Americans, I'm sure you'll tell me I said that wrong.
No, you're good.
The 44th were again right in the thick of it. Now, in theory, the British should have won this one. They had a massive numerical advantage with over 15,000 men against a much smaller French force. But once again, poor planning and overconfidence turned the assault into a complete disaster. The 44th, along with other British units, charged straight into the French defences, which were well fortified and protected by a wall of sharpened logs. The result? A bloodbath. Nearly 2,000 British soldiers were killed or wounded, and the 44th was decimated in the attack. It was a humiliating defeat, the bloodiest day of that war. The regiment, though, returned to America for the Revolution, landing in Boston in 1775. It fought at the Battle of Brooklyn, the Battle of Brandywine and Germantown, and the Battle of Monmouth in June 1778. As far as I can see, though, they didn't suffer any specific disasters as such. Now, just quickly, many of you will be aware that
before I'll allow him to get into his deal here, it does sound like a lot of, so far, early on, it's just mismanagement, bad leadership, which is you see time and time again through multiple, centuries, even to this day, mismanagement by leaders. It's not an easy thing. And I guess it's just bad luck that you get somebody who doesn't lead you. And honestly, I imagine bad leadership is more common than good leadership, because it's hard. It's hard to be really good at leading a military campaign. It just to the novice, simple-minded person who looks at it from afar, it just seems very difficult. There's so many factors and variables that have to kind of go your way for it to be totally successful. I guess it relies on them being able to be a quick thinker or to adjust to what's actually happening, All good plans go to waste, right? Isn't that the saying? But the fact that they've been around for as long as they have, I would say looks good on them, right? I mean, that they're still around, it sounds like. But yeah, especially you with the British, one thing you're doing a lot is playing a lot of away games. Every time you're in a war, it seems like you're somewhere else, right? So you have to deal with that, dealing as a visitor. It's just, it's hard. It's just hard.
In
Okay, here we go.
1782, most British regiments of foot were given county designation, and this unit became the 44th brackets East Essex Regiments of Foot. Now, fast forward to the French Revolutionary and Napoleonic Wars. The 44th had the bad luck to be shipped off to the West Indies at first, always a terrible place that saw horrific casualties, mainly from disease. A second battalion was soon raised, and they fought at the Battle of Fuentes de Oñoro in 1811 and the storming of Badajoz the following year, one of the bloodiest sieges of the entire Peninsular War.
Dang.
Now, let's go back to the historical record of the 44th. It says, at 8 o'clock in the evening, the 5th Division under Lieutenant General Leith, of which the 44th formed part, broke up and from its bivouac, and the 2nd Brigade, composed of the 4th, 30th and 44th, alongside the 5th Cazadores, commanded by Major General Walker, formed in rear of a mill close to the southwest angle of the works, at which point it escalated, and having succeeded in gaining the walls, maintained its ground, carried the bastions to the right, obtained possession of the Las Palmas Gate, and cleared that part of the town of the enemy. Lieutenant Colonel Francis Brooke of the 4th Regiment commanded the advance party, which consisted of the 4th King's Own, the light companies of the 30th and the 44th, and that of the 38th from the 1st Brigade of the division.
A lot of
After
info
breaking
right there.
through the palisading and entering the ditch, they were exposed to a murderous flanking fire of grape and musketry. Half their number fell.
Oh,
Now, the assault on Badajoz in 1812 has been well covered on this channel before. It turned into a brutal melee, with soldiers fighting hand-to-hand for control of the city. The 44th suffered massive casualties, but they helped secure a hard-fought victory against a determined and well-prepared enemy. But soon the 44th had a real turn of fortune, winning an Imperial French Eagle at the Battle of Salamanca. As it says on essexregiment.co.uk about the Battle of Salamanca in July 1812, the 44th Regiment was attached to the 5th Division, which formed the centre of the British line. As battle joined, the 44th section line of battle coincided with a small area of woodland, which meant that the two lines were only a few yards apart before each became visible. Fortunately for the British, the French line at this point was engaged in a change of formation, and the British seized advantage by firing a volley and then charging. The French line turned in confusion, at which point 2 squadrons of dragoon guards drove through the French lines. Lieutenant William Pearce and Privates Finlay, Murray, Blackburn and Devine of the 44th Regiment, together with Lieutenant Francis Maguire of the 4th Regiment, and Ensigns John Pratt of the 30th Regiment, surprised a group of French soldiers. Let's go back again to the historical record. It says, the French were called on to lay down their arms, about which there was some demur, but on the cavalry returning to the charge, they gladly did so, craving protection. The French officer who carried the eagle had just wrenched it from the pole when Lieutenant Pearce first saw it. He was endeavouring to conceal it under his grey greatcoat, which he wore over his uniform. Private, afterwards Sergeant Finlay, aided in the capture, and the French officer making resistance was assisted by one of his men, who, attacking Lieutenant Pearce with his fixed bayonet, was shot dead by Private Bill Murray of the 44th Light Company. Privates Blackburn and Devine of the same company also had a hand in this affair, and Lieutenant Pearce divided $20, all the money he had with him, amongst the 4 men for their gallant exertions. The gallantry of the 2nd 44th gained them the nickname the Little Fighting Fours. So it wasn't all bad luck for the 44th.
Yeah, I was going to
They were
say,
clearly hard buggers.
that's a pretty prestigious thing to happen, right? Grabbing one of those.
Little Fighting Fours. So it wasn't all bad luck for the 44th. They were clearly hard buggers and excellent soldiers. Meanwhile, the 1st Battalion was shipped off to fight in the War of 1812 against, yep, you got it, the United States. They were part of the British force that burned Washington, D.C. in 1814.
Hey, there you go. That's a win.
Glorious moment. But their fortunes
I
soon
love it.
turned. At the Battle of New Orleans in 1815, the 44th were part of the British attack on the American defences. It was an attack that was a disaster. The 44th was ordered to carry ladders to
that
help
didn't
scale
go
the
there.
American defences, but confusion reigned and the ladders were left behind. As a result, the regiment was picked apart by enemy fire with no way to get over the fortifications. As Wendell Schollander says in his excellent article about the 44th, many explanations were offered as to why the 44th had failed to place the ladders and carry out the regiment's duty that day. It's hard to know what's true. However, the commander of the regiment was found to be at fault and discharged from the army. The 44th hardly covered itself with glory in the whole affair. It was another stroke of bad luck. It was a catastrophic defeat and the 44th suffered heavy casualties once more. Despite what my American friends like to say in the comments, that war was clearly a draw at best for the Americans, not the crushing victory that many of them genuinely believe just because they won this battle.
Yeah, that's true. I know a lot. I mean, first of all, I'm sure this guy here, Andrew Jackson, later President Andrew Jackson, he definitely would have said it was a victory, the War of 1812, of course. But I know it to be a draw. And let's be honest, we didn't get your best effort, even though you did, burn down our capital. So, I mean, it's got to be a draw. It was just kind of like, okay, we're done kind of thing. New Orleans, definitely not a draw. That was a big victory, as Chris here has already said, but I'm just trying to think back in school if what I was taught, and I'm sure, we're talking many years ago, I'm sure we were taught that the Americans won this conflict. I'm sure. But not that that's anything new. You're going to get different historical records depending on who you ask. I'm sure.
The next war the regiment fought was the First Burma War of 1824-25. Now, there's not much to say about this except that casualties from disease were very heavy. More bad luck. And now we come to one of the darkest chapters in the 44th's history, the First Anglo-Afghan War in 1842. After a promising start to the war, the 44th were part of the British garrison at Kabul. But things soon turned ugly and the British were forced to negotiate a withdrawal through the mountains back to India. That was a bad mistake. The retreat turned into a massacre as Afghan tribesmen ambushed the British column in the freezing winter conditions. The 44th were tasked with covering the rearguard, but they were overwhelmed. The regiment made its final stand at the village of Gandamak, where nearly every man was killed. Lieutenant Thomas Souter, though, had been protecting the regimental colour by wearing it under his sheepskin coat wrapped around him. When the Afghans overran the hill, it fell open, revealing the bright yellow silk of the colour, and this saved his life. The Afghans assumed he was an important man and took him prisoner instead of killing him. Badly wounded, Souter was stripped of all his possessions, but the colour was later returned to him, and I'm told it now hangs in the regimental chapel at Worley. William Barnes Wallen's celebrated painting of the last stand of the 44th Foot, showing a group of ragged but determined redcoats encircled behind a thin line of bayonets as the Pashtun tribesmen close in, became one of the era's most famous images and helped to define Britain's image of itself. Out of the entire army, only one European, Dr. William Bryden, actually managed to escape back to British lines. The massacre sealed the 44th's reputation as probably Britain's unluckiest regiment.
Damn.
And I do want to point out that they might be an unlucky regiment, but they were a damn good one, just making that clear. In 1854, they were sent to fight in the Crimean War, where they participated in the battles of Alma and Inkerman. They also took part in the siege of Sevastopol. Conditions were horrendous. Men were freezing to death in the trenches, and diseases like cholera were rampant. Once again, the 44th suffered heavy casualties, but they fought on, taking part in some of the most grueling battles of the war. Sergeant W. McWhinney also earned the regiment's first VC. His citation describes numerous deeds, including his work as a sharpshooter and carrying wounded men under fire. A few short years later, August 1860, the regiment fought in China, taking part in the storming of the Taku forts. This was a really tough fight, but two of the lads earned a VC in very difficult circumstances. One of them was Lieutenant Rogers. His citation reads, for distinguished gallantry in swimming the ditches and entering the North Taku fort by an embrasure during the assault. They were the first of the English established on the walls of the fort, which they entered in the order in which their names are here recorded, each one being assisted by the others to mount the embrasure. Sure, imagine swimming through a moat under fire. Braver men than me. In 1880,
I need to go back
imagine here recorded, each one being assisted by the others to mount the embrasure.
I'm afraid I don't know what embrasure means in this instance here. So I guess I can probably look that up, and I probably will.
Sure, imagine swimming through a moat under fire. Braver men.
Swimming. through the
In
mud,
1881,
under
the
fire.
44th were merged with the 56th Regiment to form the new Essex Regiment. This was part of those famous Cardwell reforms. What followed was hard fighting in Sudan, the Boer War, and of course the two World Wars, and they fought like lions across the globe. Now they're represented in the modern British Army by the Royal Anglian Regiment. The traditions of the 44th and 56th Regiments of Foot are still maintained, I'm told, by C Company of the 1st Battalion, Royal Anglian Regiment. So, what can we say about the 44th East Essex? They may have been unlucky, but they were also one of the most resilient regiments in British history. From the disastrous ambush at Monongahela to the massacres of Afghanistan and through two world wars, the 44th always fought with courage, even when the odds were stacked against them. Perhaps they weren't so much unlucky as they were unbreakable, because no matter how many times they were knocked down, they always got back up. So shout out to the Victorian Military Society, by the way. I'm heavily involved with them and I think you might be interested in joining. In fact, the inspiration for today's video came from an article I read in their wonderful Soldiers of the Queen magazine, a quarterly journal that you get when you join. Just check out their website, victorianmilitary.org. And, of course, thanks again to today's sponsor, ExpressVPN.
There's
to
the
keep
ad.
yourself safe online, don't forget to find out how you can...
Okay, we don't need to hear their commercial. That is, I think he sums it up at the end perfectly. Yes, technically, I guess you can say they were unlucky. But the fact that they're resilient and unbreakable and they just were kept getting sent out to all over the world. They've been around for hundreds of years. They've gone from the 55th to the 44th, then merged with the 56th. I mean, just they're incredible. It's that's listening to videos like this, and I know a lot of people in America don't understand. We think we've been in a lot of wars, and granted, we've been in quite a few for the short time. We're coming up on 250 years this year, but you're fighting two wars, just like, for instance, in 1812, you're in France and you're here, and God knows where else. The next 5 years later, you're somewhere else. It's just, he was just going through these dates, and that's just this regiment. Mind-boggling how a country, such as yourself, could manage that. It's just remarkable. It's just wild to think about. Man. Please go and support him. Please, please, please. Use the links I have below. Go and support, subscribe, like, comment on his videos. It all helps him tremendously, and it's important that you do so. Thank you so much to everybody who come out and hang out. Hopefully you had a great New Year's. I had a wonderful New Year's. I got to go to a friend's house. They had a big party, and it was really enjoyable. Really nice to see a lot of people, and hope yours was wonderful. I think we're going to check out the fireworks here coming up that happened, so I'm looking forward to that. Hope to see you all in the next video. Hope everybody's happy and healthy and safe. We'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.
Mark from the States, Mark from the States, it's Mark.